We are officially less than 2 months away from the release of the Resident Evil 2 remake, and words cannot express my excitement. I was perusing YouTube in an attempt to satiate my unquenchable thirst for new material when I came across this particular video and thought to myself, this might make for an interesting response. Full disclaimer, I am an unabashed fan of Resident Evil. I have lived and breathed this franchise since the very beginning, more than 20 years ago. So what I present here may be on the biased side. However, even though I have defended past decisions made by Capcom in regards to the series' direction, I have not let my bias get in the way of critiquing some of their other decisions. I am no fan of RE5 or 6, and I completely understand the backlash those games received from the Resident Evil fandom. In fact, I fully agree with the criticisms towards Capcom. While 5 and 6 were not bad games, they did not hold up to the rest of the Resident Evil series. I enjoyed the hell out of RE4, but I can't help feeling that by ditching the claustrophobic atmosphere of the previous games in the series in favor of straightforward action horror, Capcom made a small tactical error which subsequent games only magnified and made worse. It wasn't until RE7 was released that I felt the series had found its footing again. The claustrophobia, the paranoia, the near panic at a dwindling supply of items, the genuinely grotesque and visceral horror, all were introduced and reshaped for a modern era of gaming, one that had learned to expect something a little better than third-person tank controls. Just thought I would share my 2 cents before any of you completely write me off as a blind brand loyalist. Now before I go completely off tangent, as Philip DeFranco famously says, let's just jump right in.
Here are 5 reasons as to how Capcom is destroying greatness with this all-new edition of Resident Evil 2.
Oh my goodness. Did you hear that, folks? Capcom is destroying greatness!
Oh my god.
It's awful.
We were promised a remake and we didn't get a remake. Many years ago, Capcom announced that they were going to remake Resident Evil 2, and you know, Capcom, I'm still waiting for that remake. Unfortunately, what we got is a reimagined version of Resident Evil 2.
There's a difference between a reimagining and a remake? It would have been nice if you provided some context or explanation. It seems to me, though, that reimagining a game is what a good remake is supposed to do, to maintain the spirit of the original while bringing it up to date for a new audience. The story is the same, the characters are the same, the surroundings are deliberately patterned after the original game. But no, I know what you want. You don't even want a remake, let alone a reimagining. What you're looking for is the exact same game except with graphics updates. And frankly, that's just an invitation to a half-assed game. Do you really want tank controls and fixed camera angles back?
The third-person camera does not do anything to benefit this experience. Now you can see everything in front of you. You no longer have that moment of suspense or that moment of, oh my god, I hear something, but I can't see it because of the fixed camera angles.
Ah, shit, you do. Look, the fixed camera angles and primitive controls may have upped the tension back in 1998, but they were also a function of their time. I've gone back and played the original RE2 just recently, and I find the controls almost insurmountably difficult now. And this is coming from someone who has achieved an A ranking on discs 1 and 2 unlocking Hunk's side game. What was acceptable then is hopelessly clunky now. There's nothing wrong with allowing gameplay to evolve as long as the atmosphere of the game remains, and based off of the footage I've seen, I think they did it just right. And I'm sorry, but fixed camera angles don't automatically constitute dread and terror. If you want a prime example of an incredibly scary game that doesn't rely on fixed camera angles to immerse the player in absolute fear, see the first Silent Hill game.
And now because of this new camera system in play here for this all-new edition of Resident Evil 2, the game is dependent, it's reliant on jump scares.
Wait, you're complaining about jump scares? Seriously? Have you played the original Resident Evil 2? That game is loaded, and I mean loaded, with jump scares. Mood fucking point, my dude. And based off of the footage available, this game is far from devoid of atmosphere. Hey pal, you know what we're getting in the remake that we didn't get in the original? Exploring your surroundings in pitch black with the only light coming from your fucking flashlight. You can't sit there and tell me that that is not scary.
Capcom has completely totally changed everything. Since this all-new edition of Resident Evil 2 has been reimagined for the Fortnite crowd, they've went back in and built everything from the ground up.
Yeah, they went in and built everything from the ground up. What's your point? When they remade the original Resident Evil back in the GameCube era, they built everything from the ground up too. This isn't quite enough to convince me that you have a point.
Look at the kendo shop here in this all-new edition of Resident Evil 2 and compare it to what it looked like in the original game. What in the shit's going on here? They took what was such an iconic, memorable location in the original game and really just turned it into something that looks so freaking generic.
Really? Your argument is that they're using fucking Helvetica? I'm looking at this right now and I'm having a hard time determining any way in which the new background is measurably worse than the old one. I don't know how you could render the old background exactly the same now and yet have it register as believable. This just comes off as nitpicking to me. Are you also going to complain that the Ford Bronco ripoff isn't sitting right in front of the store anymore?
The game looks boring. Yeah, I know most of you, in fact all of you, are probably gonna disagree.
Yes, I beg to differ. You don't even lay out what it is that makes the game look boring other than in your own words, quote, I can't put my finger on it, end quote. Between the liquor ambush and the confrontation with William Birkin, I would say that this game looks far from boring, but hey, to each their own.
This game is more like Resident Evil 7 than it is Resident Evil 2. In fact, just for an example, the UI here in this all-new edition of Resident Evil 2 has been ripped straight out of Resident Evil 7.
The RE2 Remake was built utilizing the RE engine, the same engine that was used to build Resident Evil 7, so of course there are going to be some aesthetic similarities. None of this is anything new when it comes to games. Take Bloodborne, for example. It was made in the same engine and by more or less the same dev team as the Dark Souls series, hence the many points of comparison between the two. And I don't agree with your apparent contention that something indispensable and irreplaceable was lost with the changeover. The story remains the same, the characters remain the same, but what you want is the same old game with a new coat of paint on it, which just will not work in 2019, as well as it did 20 years ago. I won't bore you with further rambling, so I will close out with this. I understand that you want to recapture that wonderful feeling of nostalgia, but we're not going to get the old RE2 all over again. I don't think we can get it. Besides, the old RE2 already exists, although it requires an older PlayStation. Why you would want to pay more than once for a game functionally and aesthetically identical to one already in your collection escapes me. And before you lecture me on the similarities between the GameCube remake and PlayStation version of RE1, I remember them. But, again, I will reiterate, both versions of that game come from a simpler time in console gaming. It is pointless to simply ignore 20 years of evolution in video game development because you want to exactly capture an old feeling. The way back to that old feeling might lie in a new experience. And frankly, if we had to stay with the same repetitious gameplay we had in the older Resident Evil titles, I probably would have given up on it long ago.